The wind didn't howl in cold water. It whispered, low and cold, slipping between the cracks of boarded windows, curling under door frames like something hunting. The kind of wind that made people pull their coats tighter and wonder if they'd locked their doors properly. Not that locks mattered much anymore. Dutch Malone owned this town the way winter owned the mountains, absolute, suffocating, inevitable. And tonight, he was going to die. Rowan Hale didn't announce himself. He didn't kick open the saloon doors or call Dutch out into the street like some dime store hero. He simply walked in, snow still clinging to his shoulders, boots leaving wet prints on the warped floorboards. The room went quiet the way rooms do when something wrong walks through the door. Dutch was at his usual table, cards spread in front of him, cigar smoke curling toward the rafters. 3 of his men flanked him, big, mean, the kind who got paid to break things. Dutch himself was lean, sharp-featured, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He looked up when Rowan entered, and for a moment there was nothing. No recognition, no fear, just calculation. "We're closed," Dutch said, not bothering to look up from his cards. Rowan walked closer. Not fast, not slow. "No, you're not." One of the men stood up, hand drifting toward his belt. Dutch raised a finger, barely a movement, and the man sat back down. That's how it worked in cold water. Dutch didn't need to shout. He didn't need to threaten. People just obeyed. "You lost, friend?" Dutch asked, finally meeting Rowan's eyes. "Storm like this, most folks know better than to wander." "I'm not lost." Dutch leaned back in his chair, studying him. "You got a name?" "Rowan Hale." "Hale." Dutch rolled it around in his mouth like he was tasting it. "Don't know it. Should I?" "No." "Then what are you doing in my town, Rowan Hale?" Rowan stopped about 10 feet from the table, close enough to talk, far enough to move. "Passing through." Dutch smiled, but it was the kind of smile a wolf gives before it bites. "Passing through? In the middle of a blizzard? To a town with 1 road in and 1 road out, both buried under 6 feet of snow." He flicked ash from his cigar. "You must think I'm stupid." "I think you're Dutch Malone." The room got quieter. One of the men shifted in his seat. Dutch's smile didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. "That a problem?" "It is for me." Dutch set his cards down slowly. "And why's that?" Rowan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence did it for him. Behind the bar, Eliza Voss stood frozen, her hand halfway to a whiskey bottle. She'd seen men talk back to Dutch before. She'd seen what happened after. It never ended well. It never ended quick. Dutch liked to make examples. He liked people to remember. But this stranger, this Rowan Hale, he didn't look like a man asking for mercy. He looked like a man who'd already made a decision. Dutch stood up, slowly, deliberately. His men did the same, hands now openly resting on their guns. "I don't know what you heard about me, friend, but I'm going to give you 1 chance to walk out that door. You take it, and maybe you live long enough to tell someone how generous I am. I'm not walking out." "Then you're dumber than you look." Rowan's hand moved. Not fast. Not like lightning. Just efficient. Practiced. The kind of movement that didn't waste a single inch. Dutch's hand was halfway to his gun when Rowan's bullet took him in the chest. The first man to his left jerked his weapon up. Rowan's second shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him into the table. The man to the right managed to clear leather before Rowan put a round through his thigh. He went down screaming. The third man didn't even try. He just stood there, hands raised, eyes wide. 6 seconds. Maybe less. Dutch Malone crumpled to the floor, blood pooling beneath him, his cigar still smoldering on the table. His eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them anymore. Just shock, like he couldn't quite believe it had happened. Rowan lowered his gun. The smoke from the barrel curled upward, mixing with the cigar haze. He looked at the man still standing. "You gonna be a problem?" The man shook his head so hard his hat nearly fell off. "Good. Get out." He ran, didn't even grab his coat. Rowan holstered his weapon and turned toward the bar. Eliza was still standing there, knuckles white around the whiskey bottle. She looked at Dutch's body, then at Rowan, then back at the body. "He's dead," she said. Not a question, just a statement, like she needed to say it out loud to make it real. "Yeah." "You killed him." "Yeah." She set the bottle down carefully, like it might explode if she moved too fast. Do you have any idea what you just did? Rowan pulled out a chair and sat down. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. I killed a man who needed killing. He has 11 riders, Eliza said, her voice rising. 11 men who work for him, who ride for him, who kill for anyone who crosses him. They're out there right now, collecting from the ranches, and when they come back, they'll find him dead. They'll burn this town to the ground. She was shouting now, and she didn't care. They'll kill everyone in it. Men, women, children. It won't matter. Dutch was the only thing keeping them in line, and you just... She stopped, took a breath. Her hands were shaking. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. You got a name? Eliza. Eliza Voss. How long's he been running this town, Eliza? She hesitated. 18 months. And how many people has he killed in that time? I don't... She swallowed. At least a dozen. Maybe more. How many have his men killed? I don't know. Too many to count. Rowan nodded slowly. Then I'd say this was overdue. That doesn't change what's coming. No, Rowan agreed. It doesn't. He stood up and walked to the door. Outside, the snow was still falling, thick and heavy, turning the street into a white void. Somewhere out there, 11 men were riding toward Coldwater. And when they arrived, they were going to want answers. Rowan didn't have any good ones to give them. Eliza followed him to the doorway. Why did you do it? She asked quietly. Why come here? Why kill him? Rowan didn't turn around. Because someone had to. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He stepped out into the snow, and Eliza watched him go, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Behind her, Dutch Malone's blood was seeping into the floorboards, and the clock on the wall kept ticking, counting down the hours until his men came home. She should have been terrified, and she was. But underneath the fear there was something else, something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. It was a dangerous thing to feel in Coldwater. By morning, the whole town knew. Word spread the way it always did in small places, quick, quiet, unstoppable. Dutch Malone was dead. A stranger had killed him. The stranger was still here. People locked their doors, boarded their windows. Some of them packed bags, trying to leave before Dutch's men returned. But the roads were impassable, the mountain passes choked with snow. There was nowhere to go. Coldwater was a trap, and they were all caught in it. Rowan spent the night in the stable, curled up in the hay with his coat pulled tight. He didn't sleep much, never did after a killing. His mind kept turning over the variables. How many men, how well armed, how loyal. Dutch had 11 riders. That was a problem, 11 men with nothing to lose and everything to avenge. He should have left last night, should have taken his chances with the storm. But the truth was, he'd known the passes were closed before he ever walked into that saloon. He'd known what killing Dutch would mean. He'd done it anyway. Around mid-morning, the stable door creaked open. Rowan's hand went to his gun before he saw who it was. Eliza. She had a tray in her hands. Bread, some kind of stew, coffee that steamed in the cold air. She set it down carefully, keeping her distance. You don't have to... Rowan started. I know, she said, but you're going to need your strength. He looked at the food, then at her. You think they're coming today? Maybe. Maybe tomorrow. Depends on the weather. She wrapped her arms around herself. They usually collect from the western ranches first, then swing back through town. If the snow slowed them down, then we have time. Time for what? Rowan picked up the coffee. It was hot, strong, bitter, exactly what he needed. To prepare. Eliza laughed, but there was no humor in it. Prepare? There are 11 of them, professional killers, and you're... She stopped. What are you exactly? Someone who killed Dutch Malone. That's not enough. It'll have to be. She stared at him for a long moment. You're going to get everyone in this town killed. I'm going to try not to. That's not reassuring. It's honest. Eliza turned to leave, then stopped at the door. There's something you should know, she said quietly. I've been keeping records. Every crime Dutch and his men committed. Every murder, every theft, everything. It's all written down. Dates, names, witnesses. Rowan set down his coffee. Where? Hidden. Safe. Why are you telling me this? Because if that ledger reaches the authorities, it's enough to hang every one of them. But the roads are blocked, and there's no telegraph in Coldwater. Dutch made sure of that. She looked at him. I've been waiting 18 months for a way out. You just gave me one. By killing him? By proving he's not invincible. Rowan stood up slowly. If his men find out about that ledger, they'll kill me. I know. She smiled, and it was sad and tired and fierce all at once. But I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of watching people die and not doing anything about it. So if you're going to make a stand, I'm going to help. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment Dutch rode into town. She met his eyes. So what do we do? Rowan thought about it. 11 men, 1 town, no way out. We make them think twice, he said finally. How? I don't know yet. Eliza nodded. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. And in Coldwater, something was better than nothing. The town had a meeting that afternoon, not official, not organized. People just started gathering in the church, the only building big enough to hold them all. About 40 souls, maybe less. Farmers, shopkeepers, a school teacher, a few families with kids. All of them scared. Rowan stood in the back, watching. He didn't say anything. This wasn't his town. These weren't his people. But they were the ones who were going to die if he didn't do something. A man in his 50s stood up front. Graying hair, calloused hands, the look of someone who'd spent his life working the land. His name was Samuel, and he'd lost a son to Dutch's men 6 months ago. We all know why we're here, Samuel said. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. Dutch is dead. His men are coming. And when they get here, they're going to want blood. So what do we do? Someone shouted from the crowd. We leave, a woman said. Pack what we can and go. The roads are closed, Mary, Samuel said gently. We're not going anywhere. Then we're dead. Silence. Samuel looked around the room. Maybe. Maybe not. There's one more option. What's that? We fight. The room erupted. People shouting, arguing, half of them calling Samuel crazy, the other half just looking terrified. Rowan watched it all unfold, his expression unreadable. Fight? Mary laughed bitterly. With what? Most of us don't even own guns. Then we get some, Samuel said. From where? Dutch's men aren't the only ones with weapons. There are rifles in town, hunting guns. We pool them, we organize, we die, someone else said. That's what we do. We're not fighters, Samuel. We're farmers, shopkeepers. You want us to go up against 11 killers? I want us to survive. Survival means running, not fighting. There's nowhere to run. The argument went in circles, voices rising, tempers flaring. Rowan had seen it before. Fear did that to people, made them desperate, made them stupid. Finally, Samuel raised his hands. Enough. We're not going to decide this by shouting. We need to vote. Vote on what? Mary asked. On whether we fight or surrender. Surrender to what? They're going to kill us anyway. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe if we give them the man who killed Dutch. Every eye in the room turned to Rowan. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there, arms crossed, watching them watch him. Samuel looked uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's an option. It's cowardice, Eliza said, stepping forward. She'd been quiet until now, but her voice cut through the noise like a blade. You want to hand him over? Fine. But don't pretend it'll save you. Dutch's men won't care. They'll burn this town anyway, just to make a point. You don't know that, Mary said. Yes, I do. I've watched them for 18 months. I've seen what they do. They don't forgive. They don't forget. And they sure as hell don't show mercy. So what do you suggest? Samuel asked. Eliza looked at Rowan. We fight. With what army? With him. The room went quiet. Samuel shook his head. One man isn't an army, Eliza. He killed Dutch in 6 seconds, she said. And Dutch was fast. If he can do that, maybe he can... Maybe he can what? Mary interrupted. Take on 11 men by himself? That's suicide. It's a chance, Eliza said, which is more than we had yesterday. Rowan finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. I'm not an army, he said, but I'm not running. If you want to fight, I'll help. If you want to surrender, that's your choice. But don't fool yourselves. Giving me up won't save you. It'll just make it easier for them to kill you all. You sound awfully sure of that, Samuel said. I've seen it before. Where? Rowan didn't answer. Samuel sighed. All right, let's vote. Everyone in favor of fighting, raise your hand. A few hands went up, not many, maybe a dozen. Everyone in favor of surrendering? More hands, not a majority, but close. And everyone who doesn't know? The rest of the room. Samuel looked tired. We'll meet again tomorrow. Maybe by then. The door slammed open. A boy, couldn't have been more than 12, stumbled in, gasping for breath. They're coming, he wheezed. Riders, from the west. The room froze. How many? Samuel asked. I don't know. A lot. Rowan moved to the window. Through the snow, he could see them, dark shapes on horseback, moving slow but steady. He counted. 11. They were a day early. Eliza appeared at his shoulder. What do we do? Rowan looked at her, then at the people in the church. Scared, unprepared, unarmed. You get everyone inside, he said. Lock the doors. Stay quiet. And you? I'm going to buy you some time. How? He didn't answer, just walked out into the snow, his hand resting on his gun. Behind him, the church door closed, and the riders kept coming. Caleb Harker was not a patient man. He was Dutch's second in command, which meant he was the meanest, fastest, and most ruthless of the 11. He was also the smartest, which made him dangerous in ways that went beyond a quick draw. He'd known something was wrong the moment they rode into town. Too quiet. No one on the streets. No smoke from the saloon. And Dutch. Dutch always met them when they came back. Always. Harker raised a hand and the riders stopped. They were spread out along the main street, horses snorting in the cold. 10 men behind him, all of them killers. All of them loyal. Or so he thought. Something's off, Harker said. One of the men, a scarred brute named Pike, grunted. Maybe Dutch is drunk. Dutch doesn't get drunk. Then where is he? Harker didn't answer. He was looking at the saloon. The door was open. Snow had drifted inside. That's when he saw the blood. He dismounted slowly, his hand on his gun. The others followed. They moved as a unit, practiced, efficient, deadly. Inside the saloon they found Dutch, or what was left of him. The body had frozen overnight, which meant the blood hadn't spread as much as it could have, but it was still there, dark, frozen, proof of what had happened. Pike swore. Another man just stared. A third one turned and walked out, his face pale. Harker knelt beside the body. Dutch's eyes were still open, staring at nothing. There was a bullet hole in his chest, clean and precise. Professional. Who did this? Pike asked. Harker stood up. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning. I don't know, but we're going to find out. He walked outside. The town was still silent, too silent. They're hiding, Harker said, all of them. Want us to drag them out? Pike asked. Not yet. Harker looked around. First I want answers, then I want blood. He raised his voice, letting it carry across the empty street. I know you're in there, all of you, listening. He paused. Someone in this town killed Dutch Malone, and I want to know who. Silence. I'm going to count to 10, Harker said. And if someone doesn't step out here and tell me what happened, I'm going to start burning buildings, starting with the church. Still nothing. 1. Inside the church, people were holding their breath. 2. Eliza looked at Samuel. He looked back, his face pale. 3. Rowan was standing in the bell tower. He'd climbed up while Harker was inside the saloon. From here, he could see everything, the riders, their positions, their weapons. 11 men, just like Eliza said. 4. Rowan checked his gun. 6 rounds. He had more ammunition, but not much. Certainly not enough for 11. 5. He could leave. Slip out the back, disappear into the snow. They'd never find him. 6. But they'd burn the town. Kill everyone inside. 7. And Eliza would die with that ledger hidden somewhere. All that evidence lost forever. 8. Rowan took a breath. 9. Then he stepped out of the bell tower and into the light. I killed him, he said. Harker turned. So did the others. 11 pairs of eyes locked onto him. Rowan walked down the street, slow and steady. His hands were at his sides. His gun was holstered. "Who the hell are you?" Parker asked. "Doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Rowan Hale." Parker's eyes narrowed. "Never heard of you." "That's the point." "You killed Dutch?" "I did." "Why?" "Because he needed killing." Parker laughed. It was a cold sound, empty of humor. "You got balls, I'll give you that. Stupid, but big." He looked at his men. "What do you think, boys? Should we make this quick or take our time?" Pike grinned. "I vote slow." "Slow it is." Rowan didn't move. "Or," he said quietly, "you could walk away." Parker blinked. "What?" "Walk away. Right now. All of you. Right out of here and don't come back." The riders stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're serious," Harker said. "Dead serious. You think we're just going to, what, forgive you? Forget Dutch?" "No," Rowan said. "I think you're going to choose survival. Over revenge? Over death." Harker's smile faded. "You think you can take all of us?" "I think 4 of you are already thinking about running." The riders shifted. Harker noticed. So did Rowan. "Dutch is dead," Rowan continued. "You don't owe him anything anymore. No more collecting, no more killing. You're free, so take it. Right away. Live." "And if we don't?" Harker asked. "Then you burn with him." Harker stared at him for a long moment. Then he drew his gun. "Wrong answer," he said. Rowan moved. The first shot came from Harker's gun, but Rowan was already moving. He'd seen the tell, the slight shift in Harker's shoulder, the way his jaw tightened. By the time the bullet left the barrel, Rowan had dropped low and rolled left, snow spraying up around him. His own gun cleared leather in the same motion. One shot. Pike went down, clutching his leg, screaming. The street erupted. 11 men firing at once created a noise that swallowed everything else. The wind, the screams from inside the church, even thought itself. Bullets punched through wood, shattered windows, kicked up frozen dirt. Rowan kept moving, using the water trough for cover, then a hitching post, then the corner of the general store. He fired twice more. One miss, one hit. A rider named Jessup took it in the shoulder and spun off his horse. 10 left. No. 9. One of them, a younger kid, couldn't have been more than 19, threw his gun down and ran. Just bolted toward the edge of town, not looking back. Harker saw it. "Coward," he roared, but he didn't waste a bullet. He was too busy trying to kill Rowan. The problem was, Rowan wasn't where Harker thought he'd be. He'd circled around behind the livery stable, using the chaos as cover. From there, he had a clean angle on 3 of them. He fired. A man named Cole jerked backward, hit in the side. Not fatal, but enough to take him out of the fight. 8, then 7, as another rider, older, gray-haired, maybe having second thoughts about dying for a dead man, turned his horse and galloped west. He didn't say anything, didn't even look back, just left. Harker's face went red. "Stand your ground," he shouted at the remaining men. "He's just one man." But doubt was a poison, and it was spreading fast. Rowan reloaded, his hand steady despite the adrenaline screaming through his veins. 6 fresh rounds. He stepped out from behind the stable and fired 3 times in quick succession. One bullet caught a man in the thigh. Another hit someone's horse, and the animal reared, throwing its rider. The third went wide. 6 men left. 5, actually, because the one who'd been thrown wasn't getting up. Harker realized what was happening. His crew was falling apart. Fear, doubt, self-preservation, all of it working against him. He'd lost control, and in a fight like this, control was everything. He made a decision. "Fall back," he shouted. "Regroup behind the saloon." The remaining men didn't need to be told twice. They scattered, some diving behind cover, others spurring their horses toward better positions. It wasn't a retreat. Not exactly. But it wasn't a charge either. Rowan didn't chase them. That would be suicide. Instead, he moved to a new position, inside the blacksmith shop, where he had a view of the saloon and decent cover from the forge. The gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Inside the church, Eliza was pressed against the wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Around her, people were crying, praying, holding each other. A woman near the front had fainted. Samuel was trying to keep everyone calm, but his own hands were shaking. "Is it over?" someone whispered. I don't know, Samuel said. We should run. While they're distracted, run where? Eliza snapped. The second you step outside, you're dead. We're dead anyway. Not if he wins. He can't win. Look at him. He's one man. Eliza didn't answer. She was looking out the window, trying to see through the snow and smoke. Somewhere out there, Rowan Hale was fighting for his life. For all their lives. She thought about the ledger hidden beneath the floorboards of her room. 18 months of evidence, names, dates, crimes, everything Dutch and his men had done. If she could just get it to the authorities. But the roads were still closed. And even if they weren't, she'd never make it past Harker's men. Unless Rowan did the impossible. Outside, Harker was regrouping. He had 5 men left with him, loyal, hardened, too deep in blood to turn back now. Pike was hurt but still in the fight, his leg wrapped with a torn strip of shirt. The others were rattled, but holding. Where is he? Pike growled, his rifle sweeping the street. Somewhere close, Harker said. He was thinking, calculating. Rowan Hale. The name didn't mean anything to him, but the skill did. That kind of precision, that kind of calm under fire, it wasn't natural. It was trained, military maybe, or something worse. We should burn him out, Pike said. No, Harker's voice was sharp. Not yet. He's waiting for us to make a mistake, so we don't make one. Then what do? We flush him out. Harker turned to one of the men, a wiry killer named Lynch. Go round back. Check the stable, the blacksmith, anywhere he could be hiding. Careful, don't get yourself killed. Lynch nodded and slipped away, moving low and fast. Harker watched him go, then turned to the others. The rest of you, keep your eyes open. He moves, you shoot. Don't think, just shoot. Inside the blacksmith's shop, Rowan heard the footsteps before he saw the man. Slow, deliberate, trying to be quiet. He moved to the side of the doorway, his back against the wall, and waited. Lynch stepped inside, rifle raised. He swept the room, left, right, checking corners. Good instincts, but not good enough. Rowan moved behind him, fast and silent. His hand clamped over Lynch's mouth, and his knife found the gap between the man's ribs. Lynch made a choked sound, then went limp. Rowan lowered him to the ground, checked his pulse, dead, and took his rifle and ammunition. 5 left. He moved to the back window and looked out. From here he could see the saloon. Harker was visible for just a second, barking orders. Rowan raised the rifle, sighted, and a bullet slammed into the window frame inches from his head. He dropped, wood splinters raining down on him. Someone had seen him. Probably Pike. The man was hurt, but not blind. Rowan crawled to the other side of the shop, keeping low. He needed a new angle, a new plan. 5 men were still too many, especially when they were dug in and waiting. He thought about Eliza's ledger, about the people in the church, about the choice he'd made when he pulled that trigger on Dutch Malone. There was no going back now. Harker was getting impatient. Lynch should have reported back by now. Either he'd found something or... Lynch is dead, Pike said, reading Harker's face. Probably. So what now? Harker looked around. The town was small, maybe 20 buildings total. They could search every one, but that would take time, and time gave Rowan more chances to pick them off. No. They needed to force his hand. Harker's eyes landed on the church. Get the torches, he said. Pike hesitated. You sure about that? You got a better idea? Pike didn't. 5 minutes later, 2 of Harker's men were moving toward the church, torches in hand. The plan was simple. Threaten to burn it down, and Rowan would have to come out. Either that, or he'd let everyone inside die. Harker was betting on the former. Rowan saw them coming. He was back in the bell tower now, having slipped out of the blacksmith's shop and circled around through the snow. From up here, he had a clear view of everything. He saw the torches, he saw where they were headed, and he knew he had maybe 30 seconds to stop them. He raised the rifle, sighted on the first man, a burly killer with a beard, and fired. The shot took him in the chest, and he went down hard, the torch tumbling from his hand into the snow where it hissed and died. The second man spun around, looking for the shooter. Rowan fired again, hit him in the shoulder. The man dropped his torch too, clutching the wound and stumbling back toward the saloon. 4 left. But now they knew where he was. Bullets started slamming into the bell tower. The walls were thin wood, and they punched through easily. Rowan flattened himself against the floor, covering his head as the world exploded around him. He couldn't stay here. In another 10 seconds, he'd be dead. He crawled to the edge, looked down. It was a 15-foot drop to the roof of the church, then another 10 to the ground. Not ideal, but better than staying. He jumped. The landing was rough. His ankle twisted, pain shooting up his leg, but he didn't stop. He slid down the roof, dropped to the ground, and ran, limping, bleeding from a graze on his arm he hadn't even noticed, but alive. Harker saw him. "There! Don't let him—" Rowan fired twice, forcing Harker and his men to duck. Then he was around the corner, into the alley between the church and the general store, moving as fast as his injured leg would carry him. Behind him, he heard Harker shouting orders. They were coming. Inside the church, people heard the gunfire getting closer. Some of them were crying now, convinced this was the end. Samuel tried to keep them together, but he was just as scared. Eliza wasn't crying. She was angry. Angry at Dutch for what he'd done to this town. Angry at Harker for continuing it. Angry at herself for hiding all this time instead of fighting. She looked around at the faces, people she'd known for years, good people who didn't deserve this. Then she made a decision. She stood up and walked to the door. "Eliza, what are you doing?" Samuel hissed. "Ending this." "You can't—" But she was already gone. She stepped outside into the snow and the cold hit her like a fist. The street was chaos. Bodies, blood, spent shell casings everywhere. Smoke hung in the air, mixing with the falling snow. She saw Harker and his men advancing on the alley where Rowan had disappeared. "Stop!" she shouted. They turned. So did Rowan, who was halfway down the alley, trapped between a wall and a fence. Harker smiled. Well, well, Eliza Voss. Didn't expect to see you out here." "This ends now," she said. "Does it?" Harker took a step toward her. "And how do you figure that?" "Because I have something you want." "What's that?" "Evidence. Every crime you and Dutch committed. Every murder. Every theft. Names, dates, witnesses. All of it written down." Harker's smile faded. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" She pulled a small notebook from her coat. Not the real ledger, just a decoy, but Harker didn't know that. "You want this? Then let him go. Let everyone go, and I'll give it to you." Harker stared at the notebook, then at her. Then he started laughing. "You think I care about some book?" he said. "Dutch is dead. His empire is done. Whatever's in there doesn't matter anymore. It matters to the law." "The law?" Harker laughed harder. "Sweetheart, the law doesn't reach this far. Never has. Never will." "Maybe not today," Eliza said. "But eventually, someone's going to come asking questions. And when they do, this book is going to hang every single one of you." Harker stopped laughing. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes. "Give me the book, Eliza." "Let them go first." "Not happening." "Then neither is this." She held the notebook over her head, as if ready to throw it into the snow and wind where it might blow away forever. Harker raised his gun. "Last chance." Rowan moved. He came out of the alley like a storm, his gun already firing. The first shot hit Pike in the chest. The second caught another man in the throat. Harker spun, trying to track him, but Rowan was already on him. They collided hard, both men going down into the snow. Harker's gun went flying. Rowan's knife came out. They rolled, grappling, punching, each trying to kill the other. The remaining two men moved to help Harker, but Eliza screamed, "No!" and threw the notebook at them. It hit one in the face, a stupid, desperate move, but it worked. He flinched, distracted for just a second. That second cost him his life. Rowan's knife found Harker's ribs, once, twice, 3 times. Harker gasped, blood bubbling from his lips, his eyes wide with shock and rage and something else. Understanding, maybe, that this was how it ended. Not in glory, not in victory, just bleeding out in the snow. He tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Then he stopped moving. The 2 remaining men looked at each other, looked at the bodies, looked at Rowan, who was standing now, covered in blood, some his, some not, his knife still in his hand. One of them dropped his gun. The other did the same. "We're done," the first one said. His voice was shaking. "We're done. We're leaving." Rowan didn't lower the knife. "Then leave." They did. They grabbed their horses and rode out of town as fast as they could, not looking back, not caring about Dutch or Harker or anything except getting as far away as possible. And then it was over. The street was silent except for the wind and the sound of Rowan's ragged breathing. He dropped the knife. His legs buckled and he went down to one knee, pain flooding through him now that the adrenaline was fading. Eliza ran to him. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I said I'm fine." But he wasn't. His ankle was swelling, his arm was cut, and there were bruises forming all over his body. He'd been shot at, stabbed at, beaten. He should have been dead. But he wasn't. The church doors opened and people started spilling out. Slowly at first, uncertain, like they couldn't quite believe it was over. Then faster, voices rising, someone shouting, someone else crying. Samuel came out and looked at the carnage. 7 bodies. Blood everywhere. The town's main street looked like a battlefield. He walked over to Rowan and Eliza. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he held out his hand. Rowan looked at it, then took it. "Thank you," Samuel said quietly. Rowan nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. Eliza helped him to his feet. "We need to get you inside. Clean those wounds." "Later." "Now." He didn't argue. He was too tired. They walked together back toward the saloon, leaving the bodies in the snow. Behind them, the townspeople began the grim work of cleaning up, dragging the dead to the edge of town, gathering weapons, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Inside the saloon, Eliza sat Rowan down and started tending to his injuries. She worked in silence, her hands steady despite everything. The cut on his arm wasn't deep. The ankle would heal, the bruises would fade, but the weight of what he'd done, that wouldn't. "How many?" he asked quietly. "Dead?" "Yeah. 7, maybe 8. I'm not sure." He closed his eyes. 7 men, in less than an hour. "You had to," Eliza said, reading his face. "Did I?" "Yes, they would have killed everyone." "Maybe." "Not maybe. Definitely." She tied off the bandage on his arm. "You saved this town." "I put it in danger first." "No, Dutch did that. You just finished it." Rowan didn't answer. He was thinking about the riders who'd fled. The 2 at the end and the 2 earlier. 4 men who'd chosen survival over revenge. 4 men who might come back someday. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd ride as far as they could and never look back. Maybe they'd start over somewhere else, leave this life behind. He hoped so. He really did. "Where's the real ledger?" he asked. Eliza smiled faintly. "Safe. Hidden. You're going to need to get it to the authorities." "I know, but the roads will clear eventually. When they do, you take that book and you don't stop until it's in the right hands. You understand?" "Why does it sound like you're saying goodbye?" "Because I am." Eliza's hands stilled. "You're leaving. Soon as I can walk without limping." "Why?" Rowan looked at her. "Because I'm not a hero, Eliza. I'm just someone who kills people, and this town doesn't need that anymore." "What if I asked you to stay?" "I'd still leave." She sat back, her face unreadable. "You're a stubborn man, Rowan Hale." "So I've been told." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the snow was still falling, covering the bloodstains, erasing the evidence. In a few hours, you'd barely be able to tell there'd been a fight at all. But the town would remember. They always did. That night, Coldwater held its breath. Not out of fear, not anymore, but out of exhaustion. People locked their doors, not because they expected another attack, but because old habits died hard. They huddled with their families, held their children, and tried to process what had happened. In the saloon, Rowan slept fitfully, his dreams full of gunfire and blood. He woke twice, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there before remembering where he was. Eliza stayed nearby, watching over him. She told herself it was because he was injured, but the truth was, she didn't want to be alone. Not tonight. When dawn came, the storm had finally broken. The snow stopped and pale sunlight filtered through the clouds. It was the first clear day Coldwater had seen in a week. People emerged slowly, blinking in the light, looking at each other like they'd survived something impossible. Which, in a way, they had. Samuel organized work crews to bury the dead. Not in the town cemetery, that was reserved for people who mattered. Instead, they dug a pit at the edge of the tree line and laid the bodies in it. No markers, no prayers, just dirt and snow. Dutch Malone went in first, then Harker. Then the others, one by one. When it was done, Samuel stood at the edge of the pit and said, "They wanted to rule this town through fear. Now they're nothing. Remember that." People nodded. Some of them cried. Not for the dead men, but for the ones they'd lost before. The husbands, sons, brothers who'd been killed by Dutch's crew over the last 18 months. This was closure, in a way. Not justice, not exactly, but something close. Rowan watched from a distance, leaning against the saloon wall. His ankle was better, the swelling down. In a day or two, he'd be able to ride. And then he'd be gone. Eliza found him there. "You should eat something." "Not hungry. You need your strength." "For what?" "For leaving, apparently." There was an edge to her voice, not anger exactly, more like disappointment. Rowan didn't respond. Eliza sighed. "Why do you do this?" "Do what?" "Save people and then leave. Don't you ever want to stay, to be part of something?" "No." "Why not?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because the things I'm good at, the things I do, they don't belong in places like this. You build a life, you build a town, you need stability, peace. I'm not those things." "You could be." "No, I couldn't." Eliza looked at him, searching his face for something. Regret, maybe, or doubt. But there was nothing, just certainty. "When are you leaving?" she asked finally. "Tomorrow, maybe the day after." "And where will you go?" "South, somewhere warmer." "And then what?" "I don't know. Find another town. Another Dutch Malone." "There's always another one, isn't there?" "Always." Eliza shook her head. "That's a lonely way to live." "Yeah, it is." She wanted to say more. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he could change, that Coldwater could be a home if he let it. But she knew it wouldn't matter. Men like Rowan Hale, they didn't settle. They drifted. It was in their nature. So instead she said, "When you go, take this." She handed him a small pouch. Inside were coins. Not a lot, but enough. "I don't need..." "Take it anyway. You earned it." Rowan looked at the pouch, then at her. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just don't get yourself killed." "I'll try." She smiled sadly. Liar. Then she walked away, back toward the town, leaving him alone with the wind and the snow and his thoughts. The next day, the road crews confirmed what everyone hoped. The main pass was starting to clear. It would take a few more days before it was fully open, but it was progress. Samuel came to see Rowan that afternoon. "Thought you'd want to know. We're sending a rider out as soon as the pass is safe. He'll take Eliza's ledger to the nearest marshal." "Good. You could go with him. Make sure it gets there." "I could. But you won't." Rowan shook his head. Samuel sat down across from him. "You know, people are going to remember you, what you did here." "I'd rather they didn't." "Too late for that." Rowan didn't answer. Samuel leaned forward. "You ever think about what happens after?" "After what?" "After you leave. After the next town. After all of this." He gestured vaguely. "What's the end game, Rowan?" "There isn't one. Everyone's got an end game." "Not me." Samuel studied him. "You're running from something." "Maybe. You want to talk about it?" "No." "Fair enough." Samuel stood up. "For what it's worth, you did a good thing here. A hard thing, but a good one." "Doesn't feel good." "It never does." He left, and Rowan was alone again. That night, the town held a gathering. Not a celebration, it was too soon for that. But people needed to be together, to share food and warmth and the simple fact that they'd survived. Rowan stayed in the saloon. He could hear the voices drifting through the walls, laughter and conversation. Normal sounds. The kind of sounds a town makes when it's alive. He thought about joining them, just for an hour, just to see what it felt like to be part of something. But he didn't. Instead, he packed his things, checked his weapons, and prepared to leave. Tomorrow, first light. No goodbyes, no speeches, just gone. But as he lay down that night, staring at the ceiling, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Regret. Not for killing Dutch, not for fighting Harker, but for the life he'd chosen. The endless drifting, the isolation, the weight of all the things he'd done and all the things he'd never have. For just a moment, he let himself imagine staying, building something here, being someone other than a killer. Then he closed his eyes and let the moment pass. Because some men weren't meant to stay, and Rowan Hale was one of them. Morning came cold and quiet, the kind of silence that settles over a town when snow muffles everything except the sound of your own breathing. Rowan was already awake, had been for an hour, sitting on the edge of the bed in the saloon's back room. His saddlebag was packed. His weapons were cleaned and loaded. His horse was ready in the stable, fed and rested. All he had to do was walk out the door. But he sat there anyway, staring at his hands. They were scarred, calloused, the hands of someone who'd spent a lifetime doing violence. He flexed his fingers, felt the stiffness in his knuckles. 38 years old and his body was already breaking down. That's what happened when you lived the way he did. He stood up, shouldered his bag, and walked out into the main room of the saloon. Eliza was there. She was sitting at one of the tables, a cup of coffee in front of her, still steaming. She looked up when he entered, and there was something in her expression, not surprise exactly, more like resignation. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Didn't try." "Coffee's fresh. Made it myself." Rowan hesitated, then set his bag down and sat across from her. She poured him a cup without asking, and he took it, grateful for the warmth. They drank in silence for a while. Outside, the first light was creeping over the mountains, turning the snow from gray to pale gold. "You're really going," Eliza said finally. Not a question. "Yeah. Even though the pass is barely clear." "It's clear enough," she wrapped her hands around her cup. "You know, I spent 18 months in this town afraid to do anything, afraid to speak up, afraid to fight back, and then you show up and change everything in 2 days." "I didn't change anything. I just killed some people who needed killing." "That's not—" She stopped, shook her head. "You're being deliberately obtuse." "Maybe. You gave us something, Rowan. Hope. A chance. You can't just pretend that doesn't matter." "I'm not pretending. I know it matters, but that doesn't mean I should stay." "Why not?" He looked at her. Really looked at her. She was tired. He could see it in the lines around her eyes, the way she held herself. But there was strength there too, the kind of strength that came from surviving something terrible and coming out the other side. "Because I'd ruin it," he said quietly. "Ruin what? This, the town, the peace you're trying to build. People like me, we don't fit into that. We're good at one thing, and that thing is violence. And once the violence is over, we're just—" He trailed off. "Just what?" "A reminder of what it cost." Eliza was quiet for a moment, then she said, "You think you're some kind of curse." "I know I am. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Rowan didn't answer. He finished his coffee and stood up. Eliza stood too. "Will I ever see you again?" "Probably not." "That's honest, at least." "I try to be." She walked around the table and stood in front of him. For a second, he thought she might hug him, and he didn't know what he'd do if she did. But she just held out her hand. He took it. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Take care of that ledger." "I will. And yourself." "I'll try." He let go of her hand, picked up his bag, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle, almost turned back, almost said something else. But he didn't. He just opened the door and walked out into the cold. The street was empty. Most people were still asleep, or at least inside, warming themselves by fires and trying to forget the last 2 days. Rowan walked to the stable, his boots crunching in the snow, and found his horse right where he'd left it. The animal nickered softly when it saw him. He patted its neck, murmured something quiet, then saddled up and led it outside. He was halfway down the street when he saw Samuel. The older man was standing outside the general store, arms crossed, watching him. Rowan stopped. "Leaving without saying goodbye?" Samuel called. "Wasn't planning on saying anything at all." Samuel walked over. His breath misted in the cold air. "You're making a mistake. I've made plenty. One more won't hurt. This town could use someone like you." "No, it couldn't. This town needs farmers and shopkeepers and teachers. It doesn't need a killer." "You're more than that." Rowan shook his head. "No, I'm not." Samuel looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "All right. I won't argue with you, but if you ever change your mind, if you ever need a place, you know where to find us." I appreciate that. Do you? Yeah, I do. Samuel held out his hand. Rowan shook it. Safe travels, Rowan Hale. You too, Samuel. He mounted his horse and rode south, out of Coldwater, toward the mountains and whatever waited beyond. He didn't look back. Didn't let himself. If he had, he would have seen Eliza standing in the doorway of the saloon, watching him go. The pass was rough, worse than he'd expected. Snow had drifted in places, creating banks that his horse had to push through. The cold was brutal, cutting through his coat like it wasn't even there. Twice, he had to dismount and lead the animal by hand, picking his way over ice and fallen rocks. It took him most of the day to reach the other side. When he finally did, the landscape opened up. Rolling hills, scattered trees, a sky that was actually blue for the first time in weeks. The air was warmer too, or at least it felt that way after the frozen hell of Coldwater. He stopped at the top of a ridge and looked back. The town was just a dark smudge in the distance, smoke rising from chimneys, barely visible against the white expanse. He wondered if Eliza had sent the rider yet, if the ledger was on its way to the law, if Coldwater would finally get the justice it deserved. He hoped so. Then he turned his horse south and kept riding. 2 days later, he reached a town called Pine Ridge. It was bigger than Coldwater, maybe 200 people, a proper main street, even a telegraph office. Rowan found a boarding house, paid for a room, and collapsed into bed without even taking off his boots. He slept for 14 hours. When he woke, it was dark outside. His body ached in places he didn't know could ache. The cut on his arm was healing, but the bruises were still vivid, purple and yellow and angry looking. He washed his face, changed his shirt, and went downstairs to find food. The boarding house had a small dining room where guests could eat. There were 3 other people there, a traveling salesman, a young couple, and an older woman who looked like she owned the place. She nodded at Rowan when he sat down, then brought him a plate of stew and bread. "You look like you've been through it," she said. "Rough road." "Where from?" "North." "Coldwater?" He paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. "You know it." "Know of it. Heard it's been having trouble." "Had," Rowan said. "Past tense." The woman raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, welcome to Pine Ridge. We're a quiet town. Law-abiding. Boring, some might say." "Boring sounds good," she smiled. "How long you staying?" "A night, maybe 2. Passing through then." "Always am." She left him to his meal, and he ate in silence, listening to the couple talk about their plans. They were heading west, looking to start a farm. The salesman was complaining about the roads. Normal conversation, normal lives. Rowan finished his food and went back upstairs. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried not to think about Coldwater. It didn't work. The next morning, he went to the telegraph office. There was a message waiting for him. He'd sent word ahead from Coldwater before things went sideways, letting a contact know where he'd be. The clerk handed him the slip of paper. Rowan read it twice, then burned it in the office's stove. The message was simple. Another job. Another town with another problem. This one was east, near the border. Details were sparse, but that was normal. People didn't put their dirty laundry in telegraphs. He could take it. Ride out tomorrow, be there in a week, do what he did best. Or he could ignore it. Stay in Pine Ridge for a while. Rest. Let his body heal. He thought about Eliza's question. What's the end game? He still didn't have an answer. That afternoon, he walked around Pine Ridge, getting a feel for the place. It was clean, orderly, the kind of town where people knew their neighbors and looked out for each other. There was a schoolhouse, a church, a general store that actually had merchandise instead of empty shelves. No saloon, though. Pine Ridge was dry, apparently. Rowan found a bench outside the general store and sat down, watching people go about their day. A mother with 2 kids. An old man sweeping his porch. A dog chasing a cat down the street. It was peaceful. It was boring. It was everything Coldwater wasn't, and it made him feel restless. He was about to leave when he noticed the young couple from the boarding house. They were standing outside the bank, arguing, not loud, but tense. The man was gesturing, frustrated. The woman looked like she was about to cry. Rowan didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. "We don't have enough," the man was saying, "not even close." "Then we'll find a way," the woman said. "How? We've been saving for 2 years and we're still short. Maybe we can ask for an extension." They already said no. The woman wiped her eyes. So what do we do? The man didn't answer. He just looked defeated. Rowan stood up and walked over. They saw him coming and went quiet. Sorry, Rowan said. Didn't mean to intrude. Just overheard. The man stiffened. It's none of your business. You're right. It's not. Rowan pulled out the pouch Eliza had given him. He opened it, counted out half the coins, and held them out. Here. The couple stared at him. What? Why? The woman stammered. Because you need it more than I do. We can't take your money, the man said. You can, and you will. Consider it a loan. Pay me back when you get that farm running. We don't even know you. Name's Rowan Hale. The man hesitated, then slowly took the coins. I'm James. This is my wife, Anna. Nice to meet you. Anna was crying now, but not from sadness. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Rowan shrugged. Just don't waste it. We won't. I swear. He left them there, holding the coins like they were made of gold, and walked back to the boarding house. It was a stupid thing to do, giving away money he might need, but it felt right. And Rowan didn't get many chances to do things that felt right. That night, he made his decision. He'd take the job, head east, keep doing what he did. Because maybe Eliza was wrong. Maybe there was an endgame, and it was this: drifting from town to town, fixing problems, then moving on before anyone got too attached. It wasn't much of a life, but it was the only one he knew. And trying to be something else, trying to settle, to belong, that would just end in disappointment, for him and everyone around him. Better to keep moving. In the morning, he packed his things, settled his bill, and headed to the stable. His horse was rested, ready to go. He checked the saddle, adjusted the straps, and was about to mount when he heard someone call his name. He turned. It was a man in his 40s wearing a badge. The town sheriff, apparently. You Rowan Hale? The sheriff asked. Depends. Who's asking? Sheriff Tom Bradley. Got a message for you. Came through the telegraph this morning. Rowan's hand drifted toward his gun. What kind of message? Bradley held up his hands. Easy. It's not trouble. At least, not for you. He pulled a slip of paper from his pocket. Woman named Eliza Voss sent it. Said you'd want to know. Rowan took the paper. It was short, just a few words. Ledger delivered. Lawmen coming. Thank you. He read it again, then folded it and put it in his pocket. Good news? Bradley asked. Yeah, good news. She also said to tell you something else. Said you'd understand. The sheriff paused. She said, the door's always open. Rowan didn't say anything. Bradley tipped his hat. Well, that's all I got. Safe travels, Mr. Hale. He walked away, leaving Rowan standing there with his horse and his thoughts. The door's always open. It was an invitation, a promise, a way back if he ever wanted it. But Rowan knew he wouldn't take it, couldn't, because going back meant facing all the things he'd spent years running from, the idea that he could be more than a killer, that he could have a life that wasn't defined by violence, and that was too much to hope for. So he mounted his horse and rode east, the message tucked in his pocket, Coldwater fading further and further behind him. The journey east took longer than expected. The roads were muddy from melting snow, and twice he had to detour around flooding. But eventually, he reached the town the message had mentioned, a place called Greystone. It was smaller than Coldwater, maybe 30 buildings total, clustered around a crossroads. The kind of place you pass through on your way somewhere else. Rowan found the man who'd sent the message, a rancher named Keller. He was in his 60s, weathered and hard, the kind of man who didn't waste words. You're late, Keller said when Rowan arrived at his ranch. Had delays. Can you still do the job? Depends on what it is. Keller led him to a barn and pointed to a map spread out on a workbench. There's a gang operating out of the hills. 5, maybe 6 men. They've been hitting ranches, stealing cattle, burning property, killed 2 of my hands last month. Law won't help? Nearest marshal is 3 days away. By the time he gets here, they'll be gone. So you want me to handle it? That's the idea. Rowan looked at the map. The hills were rough country, lots of places to hide. This wouldn't be quick or easy. Payment? He asked. 200. Half now, half when it's done. It was fair. More than fair, actually. All right, Rowan said. I'll do it. Keller nodded. Good. They hit the Parsons place 2 nights ago. Might still be in the area. I'll find them. Rowan spent the next day scouting. He rode into the hills, following trails, looking for signs. It didn't take long. The gang wasn't careful. They'd left tracks, discarded supplies, even a campfire that was still smoldering. He found them that night. There were 6 of them, just like Keller said. They'd set up camp in a ravine, hidden from the road but visible if you knew where to look. Rowan watched from the ridge above, counting weapons, noting positions. They were confident. Too confident. Laughing, drinking, acting like they owned the world. Rowan waited until they were asleep. Then he moved. The first man died without making a sound. Rowan's knife found his throat while he was on watch, and he went down quietly. The second woke up when Rowan tripped over a tin cup, but by then it was too late. One shot, clean and quick. The others scrambled for their guns. Rowan was already moving, using the darkness and confusion to his advantage. Another shot. Another man down. 3 left. One of them got a shot off, and it grazed Rowan's shoulder. He swore, dropped behind a rock, and returned fire. Hit the man in the chest. 2 left. They ran, grabbed their horses and bolted, not even bothering with their gear. Rowan let them go. He could have chased them, but what was the point? They'd scatter, never come back. Problem solved. He stood there in the ravine, surrounded by bodies and the smell of gunpowder, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just empty. This was his life. This was what he did. And it would keep happening until someone faster came along. He collected the gang's weapons, their horses, anything of value. Then he rode back to Keller's ranch and reported what he'd done. Keller paid him the rest of the money without hesitation. You're as good as they say. Who says? Word gets around. Man who killed Dutch Malone and his crew. That's a reputation. Rowan didn't like the sound of that. Reputations drew attention, and attention drew trouble. He left Greystone the next morning and kept riding. Over the next 2 months, he took 3 more jobs. A rustler in a town called Blackwood, a claim jumper near the mining camps, a man who'd murdered a family and disappeared into the wilderness. Each job was the same. Find the target, kill the target, collect the payment, move on. And each time he felt a little more hollow. He was in a town called Riverbend when he got another message from Eliza. It had taken weeks to catch up with him, forwarded through 6 telegraph offices. It was longer than the first one. Coldwater is healing. The lawmen came. Arrested 3 of Dutch's old crew who'd been hiding. Trials are next month. The town is building again. I wish you could see it. I wish you were here. There was more, but Rowan didn't read it. He folded the message and put it in his saddlebag with the first one. He wanted to write back, wanted to tell her he was glad things were working out. But what would he say? That he was still drifting, still killing people for money, that nothing had changed? So he didn't write. He just kept moving. Summer came, and with it the heat. Rowan found himself in the southern territories, where the land was dry and the towns were spread out like dice tossed across a map. He took fewer jobs now, not because he didn't need the money, but because he was tired. Tired of the killing, tired of the running, tired of himself. He was in a town called Red Bluff when he finally stopped. It wasn't a decision, exactly. More like he just ran out of momentum. He found a boarding house, paid for a week, and spent the first 3 days doing nothing but sleeping and staring at the ceiling. On the 4th day, he went to the saloon. It was mid-afternoon, so the place was mostly empty. Just the bartender, a few regulars, and a piano player who looked like he was practicing. Rowan sat at the bar and ordered whiskey. The bartender poured. You okay, friend? You look like hell. Feel like it too. Rough week? Rough year. The bartender nodded sympathetically. Anything I can do? Keep the whiskey coming. He did. Rowan drank slowly, letting the burn settle into his chest. He thought about Coldwater, about Eliza, about the choice he'd made to leave. He thought about James and Anna, the couple from Pine Ridge, wondered if they'd gotten their farm. Hoped they had. He thought about all the men he'd killed over the years. Some deserved it, some probably didn't. All of them were dead because of him. You ever wonder what the point is? He asked the bartender. Point of what? Everything, all of this. Living, dying, the stuff in between. The bartender shrugged. I try not to think about it too much. Makes my head hurt. Yeah, mine too. Rowan finished his drink and left. That night he sat on the porch of the boarding house and watched the stars. They were brighter here, away from the mountains. Endless, indifferent. He pulled Eliza's messages from his bag and read them both. The door's always open. He thought about that, about going back, about trying. But the idea scared him more than any gunfight ever had. Because what if he went back and it didn't work? What if he couldn't be the person they needed? What if he ruined everything, just like he said he would? Better to stay away. Better to keep moving. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure he believed that. He sat there until dawn, the messages in his hand, trying to decide what came next. The sun came up over Red Bluff like it had somewhere to be, spilling gold across the dusty streets and making Rowan squint. He hadn't moved from the porch. The messages were still in his hand, creased now from where he'd been gripping them too tight. He stood up, his back stiff from sitting all night, and walked inside. The boarding house was quiet. He went to his room, packed his things methodically, then sat on the bed staring at his saddlebag. He could keep going, take another job, drift further south where nobody knew his name yet, or he could turn around. The thought sat in his chest like a stone. He'd spent 6 months running from Coldwater, telling himself it was the right thing to do, that staying would have been selfish, that men like him didn't get to build lives, they just borrowed time between bullets. But the messages kept saying the same thing, come back. And he was tired of running. Rowan made his decision standing there in that small room with sunlight cutting through the window. He'd go back. Not because he thought it would work, not because he believed he deserved it, but because Eliza had left the door open and he owed it to her, to himself, to at least see if he could walk through it. He slung his bag over his shoulder and headed for the stable. The journey north took 3 weeks. Rowan didn't rush. Part of him wanted to just ride hard and get there before he changed his mind. But another part, the part that had learned caution the hard way, told him to go slow, to think, to prepare for the possibility that Coldwater wouldn't want him anymore. He stopped in Pine Ridge on the way. The town looked the same, still clean and orderly and boring. He found the boarding house where he'd stayed before, but the owner was different now. The old woman had sold the place to her nephew. "You looking for a room?" the nephew asked. "Just passing through. Looking for someone, actually. A couple, James and Anna. They were here back in winter." The nephew's face lit up. "Oh, sure. They bought land about 10 miles west, got a little farm going. Doing real well from what I hear." "Good, that's good." Rowan almost left it at that, but something made him ask, "They ever mention me?" "You got a name?" "Rowan Hale." The nephew blinked. "You're the one who gave them the money." "It was a loan." "Well, they've been looking for you, wanted to pay you back, but nobody knew where you'd gone." He paused. "You want directions to their place?" Rowan thought about it. "No, just tell them I'm glad it worked out." "You sure? They'd want to see you." "I'm sure." He left Pine Ridge that afternoon and kept riding north. The closer he got to Coldwater, the more his nerves frayed. What if Eliza had moved on? What if the town didn't need him anymore? What if showing up now just opened old wounds? He almost turned around twice, but he didn't. Coldwater appeared on the horizon on a clear afternoon in late summer. The snow was gone, replaced by green and wildflowers that somehow survived in the thin mountain soil. The town looked different, brighter, maybe. Or maybe it was just him. He rode in slowly, expecting to be recognized, expected people to stop and stare, to whisper. But nobody did. A few folks glanced at him, the way you'd glance at any stranger, then went back to their business. It threw him. He'd left as the man who killed Dutch Malone, and now he was just nobody. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. He stopped in front of the saloon. It looked the same, though someone had fixed the bullet holes in the front wall and repainted the sign. Through the window, he could see people inside, talking, drinking. Normal life. Rowan dismounted and tied his horse to the post. His hands were shaking a little. He clenched them into fists, took a breath, and walked inside. The saloon was busier than he remembered. Maybe 20 people, scattered at tables, playing cards or just talking. A man he didn't recognize was behind the bar, younger, clean-cut, probably Eliza's new hire. Eliza herself was at the back carrying a tray of drinks. She was laughing at something someone said, Her face relaxed in a way he'd never seen. Then she looked up and saw him. Everything stopped. Not literally. People kept talking, the piano kept playing, but for Rowan, the world narrowed down to just her. She set the tray down slowly, like she thought he might disappear if she moved too fast. Then she walked over. Rowan. Eliza. They stood there awkward, neither knowing what to say. Finally, Eliza smiled, small, careful, but real. You came back. Yeah. I didn't think you would. Neither did I. She glanced around at the room, then back at him. Do you want to sit? Talk? Yeah, if that's okay. Of course it is. She led him to a corner table, away from the crowd. They sat, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Rowan looked at her, really looked. She seemed lighter, somehow. The tension that had been wound through her before, that constant fear, it was gone. You look good, he said finally. So do you. Tired, but good. It's been a long few months, I imagine. She folded her hands on the table. Where have you been? East, south, all over, really. Working? Yeah. She nodded like she'd expected that. Did you get my messages? Both of them. And you still came back. The door's always open, you said. Eliza's smile widened. I meant it. I wasn't sure you would. After this long. Rowan, I've been hoping you'd come back since the day you left. I didn't think you actually would. He looked down at his hands. I almost didn't. What changed? I got tired. Of running. Of everything. Eliza reached across the table and put her hand over his. It was warm, steady. You're allowed to be tired. Doesn't feel like it. Well, you are, and you're allowed to stop. He didn't pull his hand away, just sat there, letting the contact ground him. The town looks different. It is different. We rebuilt, literally and otherwise. There's a new school, the church got a fresh roof. Samuel's organizing a town council so we can actually govern ourselves instead of just surviving. That's good, really good. We had trials too. 3 of Dutch's men who'd been hiding out got arrested. They're in prison now. Life sentences. She paused. The ledger did its job. You did your job. That ledger was yours. I wouldn't have gotten it out without you. Rowan shook his head. You would have found a way. Maybe. Maybe not. She squeezed his hand. But you made it easier. You gave us a chance, and we took it. They talked for hours. Eliza told him about the town, about the changes, about the people who'd left and the ones who'd stayed. She told him about her life. She'd sold the saloon to the new guy, but still worked there part-time. She was also teaching at the school now, basic reading and writing. Didn't know you were a teacher, Rowan said. Neither did I, but we needed one, and I was the only person who volunteered. You're good at it? I don't know. The kids haven't run away yet, so I guess that's something. Rowan told her about his travels, not the details. He didn't want to burden her with the violence, but the broad strokes, the towns he'd seen, the people he'd met, the job in Greystone. You ever think about stopping? She asked. Before now, I mean. Every day. But you didn't. No, I didn't know how. And now? He met her eyes. Now I'm trying. Eliza's expression softened. I'm glad. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The saloon was emptying out. It was getting late, and people had work in the morning. Finally, Eliza stood up. You need a place to stay? I was going to find a room somewhere. Stay here. I've got space upstairs. I don't want to impose. Rowan, you're not imposing. She hesitated. You're home, if you want to be. He stood up, his throat tight. I want to be. Then it settled. She led him upstairs to a small room at the back. It was simple, a bed, a chair, a window that looked out over the street. But it was clean, and it was quiet, and it was more than he'd had in months. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. We'll see if you still feel that way in a week. She left him there, and Rowan sat on the bed, staring at the walls. He felt off balance, like he'd been bracing for a fight, and it never came. Like he'd prepared for rejection and gotten acceptance instead. It scared him more than he wanted to admit. The next morning, Rowan woke to sunlight and the sound of voices downstairs. He dressed, went down, and found Eliza setting up for the day. She handed him coffee without a word, and he took it gratefully. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Better than I have in months." "Good. You needed it." "What's the plan for today?" She looked at him, surprised. "Plan? I can't just sit around. If I'm staying, I need to do something." Eliza thought about it. "Well, Samuel's always looking for help with the rebuilding. We're expanding the school, and there's talk of putting in a proper well so we don't have to haul water from the creek all winter. I can do that." "You sure?" "Yeah," she smiled. "All right, I'll take you over after breakfast." Samuel was at the construction site when they arrived, a patch of cleared ground near the edge of town where the new school addition was going up. He saw Rowan and stopped mid-swing with his hammer. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "You came back." "Seems like it." Samuel walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Didn't think we'd see you again. That makes two of us. You here to stay or just passing through?" Rowan hesitated. "Staying, I think." "You think or you know?" "I'm trying to know." Samuel nodded slowly. "Fair enough. You any good with a hammer?" "Good enough." "Then grab one. We've got work to do." Rowan worked alongside Samuel and 3 other men for the rest of the day. It was hard, physical labor, hauling lumber, digging post holes, hammering nails until his hands ached. But it felt good, productive, like he was building something instead of tearing it down. By the end of the day, his shoulders were screaming and his back felt like someone had beaten it with a stick. But he'd helped frame out an entire wall, and that was something. Samuel clapped him on the back. "You did good work today." "Thanks." "Same time tomorrow?" Rowan nodded. "Yeah, same time." He walked back to the saloon as the sun was setting, his body exhausted but his mind clearer than it had been in months. Eliza was waiting for him with food, stew and bread, simple but filling. "How was it?" she asked. "Hard, good. You coming back tomorrow?" "Yeah," she smiled. "I'm glad." They ate together, talking about nothing important, the weather, the town, small things. It was comfortable, easy. And for the first time since he'd arrived, Rowan let himself relax. The weeks passed and Rowan fell into a routine. He worked with Samuel during the day, building and repairing. At night, he helped Eliza at the saloon, cleaning tables, restocking supplies, occasionally breaking up arguments before they turned into fights. People started to recognize him, not as the man who killed Dutch Malone, but as the guy helping build the school, as Eliza's friend, as someone who belonged. It was strange, disorienting, but not unwelcome. One night, about a month after he'd arrived, Eliza closed the saloon early and asked him to take a walk with her. They ended up at the edge of town, looking out over the valley. "I've been meaning to ask you something," she said. "Okay. Why did you really come back?" Rowan was quiet for a moment. "Because I didn't know where else to go." "That's not an answer. It's the truth." Eliza turned to face him. "Rowan, you could have gone anywhere, done anything, but you came here. Why?" He looked at her, this woman who'd survived 18 months of hell and come out stronger, and he didn't know how to put it into words, so he just said, "Because you asked me to." "That's it?" "No, but it's part of it." He took a breath. "I spent 6 months running, Eliza, taking jobs, killing people, telling myself it was what I was good at, what I was meant for. And maybe that's true, but it's not what I want anymore." "What do you want?" "This. A place. People who don't see me as just a gun for hire. I want to wake up and not wonder if today's the day someone faster comes along." Eliza stepped closer. "And you think you can have that here?" "I don't know, but I want to try." She reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle. "Then try." He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt safe, not from violence or danger, but from himself, from the weight of everything he'd done. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Of what?" "That I'll ruin this, that I'll hurt someone or make the wrong choice, or—" "Rowan." She made him look at her. "You're not going to ruin anything. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to be human." "I'm not sure I know how." "Then learn. We'll figure it out together." He kissed her then, slow and careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he moved too fast. She kissed him back, her hands in his hair, and for a moment the world narrowed down to just the two of them. When they pulled apart, Eliza was smiling. "You're staying, right? For real this time?" "Yeah, I'm staying." "Good." They walked back to town hand in hand, and Rowan felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The next few months were the best of Rowan's life. He worked with Samuel, helped finish the school addition, then moved on to other projects, fixing roofs, building fences, reinforcing the bridge over the creek. He wasn't fast, and he wasn't perfect, but he showed up every day and did the work. People started to trust him, not because of what he'd done to Dutch, but because of what he was doing now. He was just Rowan, part of the town, part of the community. He and Eliza grew closer. They didn't rush things, didn't make grand declarations. They just existed together, ate meals together, talked late into the night, built something quiet and steady. One evening, sitting on the porch of the saloon, Eliza asked him if he ever missed it. Missed what? The other life. The drifting. Rowan thought about it. Sometimes. When things get too quiet, part of me gets restless, wants to move. What do you do when that happens? I remind myself why I stayed. And what's that? He looked at her. You, this, the idea that maybe I can be more than what I was. Eliza leaned her head on his shoulder. You already are. But peace never lasted forever. It was early autumn when the trouble started. A man rode into town, tall, lean, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgotten how to look away. He tied his horse outside the saloon and walked in like he owned the place. Rowan was behind the bar when it happened. He saw the man and felt something cold settle in his gut. Recognition. Not of the face, but of the type. The man walked up to the bar and ordered whiskey. Rowan poured it, watching. You Rowan Hale? The man asked. Who's asking? Name's Carter. Jack Carter. I've been looking for you. Why? Carter downed his whiskey and set the glass down. Because you killed my brother. The saloon went quiet. People stopped talking, stopped moving. Everyone was watching now. Rowan kept his voice calm. I've killed a lot of people. You'll have to be more specific. Greystone. 6 months ago. You shot him during a job. Rowan remembered. The gang in the hills, 6 men, 4 dead, 2 ran. He was part of a crew killing ranchers, Rowan said. Burned property, murdered hired hands. He was my brother. Then your brother made bad choices. Carter's jaw tightened. I'm here to settle the account. You mean you're here to kill me? That's right. Rowan set down the bottle he'd been holding. Not in here. You want to do this? We do it outside. Fine by me. Eliza appeared from the back room, her face pale. Rowan, don't. It's okay, he said quietly. Just stay inside. Please. Eliza, stay inside. He walked out, and Carter followed. The street was empty. People had seen what was happening and cleared out. Smart. They stood about 20 feet apart. The sun was low, casting long shadows. You don't have to do this, Rowan said. Yeah, I do. Your brother knew what he was getting into. He made his choice. And I'm making mine, Rowan sighed. All right, your move. Carter went for his gun. He was fast, faster than Rowan expected, but not fast enough. Rowan's shot hit Carter in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped his gun, clutching the wound, blood seeping through his fingers. Rowan walked over and kicked the gun away. You done? Carter was gasping, pain etched across his face. You didn't kill me. No. Why not? Because I'm tired of killing. Rowan crouched down. Your brother's dead. Nothing's going to change that. But you don't have to be. Go home. Forget about this. Live your life. Carter stared at him, confused and angry and hurting. What if I come back? Then I'll kill you, but I'm hoping you won't be that stupid. He stood up and walked back toward the saloon. Behind him, Carter struggled to his feet, got on his horse, and rode out of town. Rowan watched him go, then turned to see the whole town staring at him. Eliza was on the porch, tears streaming down her face. Not from fear, from something else. You let him go, she said. Yeah. Why? Because killing him wouldn't fix anything. It'd just make more bodies. She ran to him and wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. I thought, I know. I'm sorry. Samuel appeared from somewhere, looking shaken. That was hell, Rowan. That was something. It was stupid, Rowan said. I should have seen it coming. How? Doesn't matter. It's done. But it wasn't done. Not really. Because word would spread. People would hear that Rowan Hale was in cold water, and some of them would come looking for revenge, for reputation, for whatever reason men convinced themselves was worth dying for. And Rowan knew that eventually he'd have to kill again. The question was whether he could live with that. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of cold water settling in for the night. The creak of wood, the distant bark of a dog, the wind moving through the streets. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. But his mind wouldn't shut off. Carter would talk. Men like that always did. He'd go to some saloon in some other town and tell everyone who'd listen about Rowan Hale in cold water, about how he was slower now, softer, how he'd let Carter live when he should have killed him. And then others would come. Not just for revenge. Some would come to test themselves, to see if they were faster than the man who killed Dutch Malone. Others would come because violence was the only language they spoke, and Rowan's name was written in that language. He'd brought this on himself. Not by killing Dutch, that had been necessary, but by trying to stay, by believing he could have something different. The door to his room opened quietly. Eliza stood there in the dim light, wearing a nightdress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Can't sleep either? She asked. No. She came in and sat on the edge of the bed. You're thinking about leaving. It wasn't a question. I'm thinking about a lot of things. Rowan, one man came looking for you. One. That doesn't mean, it means more will come. You know that. I know that. He sat up, running his hands through his hair. Every day I stay here, I put this town at risk. Put you at risk. We survived Dutch. We'll survive whoever else shows up. You survived Dutch because I killed him and everyone with him. That's not a solution, Eliza. That's just more violence. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, What do you want me to say? That you should go? That it's not worth the risk? I want you to be realistic. I am being realistic. Realistically, bad things happen everywhere. People die. Towns burn. That's life. But you can't run from every possible danger. At some point, you have to stand and fight for what matters. And what if fighting means killing? What if it means turning this town into a battlefield every time someone comes looking for me? Then we deal with it, together. She took his hand. Rowan, I know you're scared. I know you think you're cursed or broken or whatever story you tell yourself, but you're not. You're just a man who's done hard things and lived with hard choices. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. Human, he repeated. I killed 7 men in cold water, shot them in the street like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, it saved lives. And how many lives will I have to take next time? And the time after that? Eliza didn't have an answer for that, because there wasn't one. They sat in silence until she finally stood up. I'm not going to tell you what to do, Rowan. You have to make that choice yourself, but whatever you decide, I want you to know something. What? I love you, and I want you to stay. Not because I need protecting, or because the town needs a killer, but because I want to wake up every morning and see you there. Because you make me happy, because, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a future worth looking forward to. She paused. But if you can't live with that, if the weight of who you were is too heavy, then I won't stop you from leaving. I'll just miss you, every day. She left before he could respond. Rowan sat there alone, her words echoing in his head. I love you. 3 words he hadn't heard in so long he'd forgotten what they felt like. 3 words that made everything harder and easier at the same time. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at Coldwater. The town was dark except for a few scattered lights. Somewhere out there, Samuel was probably asleep, dreaming about his town council. The schoolteacher was grading papers. Families were tucked into bed, safe and warm. And Rowan was the thing standing between them and the violence that would eventually come. The question was whether he was strong enough to keep standing. Morning came too fast. Rowan got up, got dressed, and went downstairs. Eliza was already working. setting up for breakfast service. She glanced at him but didn't say anything, just poured him coffee and went back to what she was doing. They didn't talk about the night before. Rowan went to the construction site like always. Samuel was there, directing the crew as they worked on the well. He saw Rowan and waved him over. "You okay?" Samuel asked. "You look rough." "Didn't sleep much." "Yeah, I heard about yesterday. Carter, right? Word travels fast." "Always does." Samuel handed him a shovel. "You did the right thing, letting him go." "Did I?" "You could have killed him. You didn't. That takes strength." "Or stupidity." Samuel smiled. "Sometimes they're the same thing." He paused. "You worried about more coming?" "Wouldn't you be?" "Probably. But worrying doesn't change anything. You can either run, or you can stay and deal with it when it happens. And if people get hurt, then people get hurt. That's life, Rowan. We don't get guarantees." Samuel clapped him on the shoulder. "All we can do is our best and hope it's enough." They worked in silence after that, digging the well deeper, hauling dirt, shoring up the sides with timber. Hard, mindless work that gave Rowan time to think. He thought about Eliza's words, about Samuel's, about the choice he had to make. He could leave, pack his things, ride out before anyone else came looking. It would be safer for everyone. Cleaner, but it would also be running, again. And he was tired of running. By the time the sun was setting, Rowan had made his decision. He walked back to the saloon, found Eliza in the back room counting receipts, and said, "I'm staying." She looked up, her face carefully neutral. "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." A smile broke across her face, and she stood up and kissed him. Not gentle, not careful, just real. "Thank you," she said when they pulled apart. "Don't thank me yet. This could still go sideways." "I know, but it's worth the risk." He held her close, breathing in the smell of her hair, and let himself believe it. Just for a moment. The weeks passed, and no one else came. Rowan started to relax, started to think maybe Carter had been it. Maybe word hadn't spread as far as he'd feared. He was wrong. The men arrived on a cold morning in late autumn. 3 of them, riding together, all armed, all dangerous looking. They tied their horses outside the saloon and walked in like they owned the place. Rowan was behind the bar again, cleaning glasses. He saw them and felt that familiar weight settle in his chest. "Here we go." The tallest one, graying hair, scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "You Rowan Hale?" "Depends." "We're looking for him." "Why?" "Because we've got business." Rowan set down the glass. "What kind of business?" "The kind that ends with you dead." The saloon went silent. People started edging toward the door. "You got names?" Rowan asked. "I'm Garrett. This is my crew. That's all you need to know." "And what did I do to you?" "You killed a man named Jessup. He was part of Dutch's crew." Rowan remembered, the man he'd shot in Coldwater during the fight with Harker. "He drew on me first." "Don't care. He was our partner. We're here to settle the account." "A lot of that going around lately." Garrett smiled. It was cold. "You're famous, Hale. Man who cleaned out Coldwater. Man who walked away from a dozen gunfights. People talk about you like you're some kind of legend." He paused. "We're here to prove you're not." Rowan sighed. "I don't want to kill you." "You won't get the chance." "I'm serious. Walk out of here right away. There's no glory in this. Just 3 more bodies. Big talk for a man behind a bar." "It's not talk. It's a warning." One of the other men, younger, cocky, laughed. "You scared, old man?" Rowan looked at him. "Yeah, I am. Scared I'll have to bury 3 more people who died for nothing." "Then you should have thought about that before you killed Jessup." Eliza appeared from the back, her face pale. "Get out, all of you. This is my place, and I'm telling you to leave." Garrett barely glanced at her. "Stay out of this, woman." "I'm not staying out of anything. You want to kill someone? Do it somewhere else. We'll do it wherever we want." Rowan stepped out from behind the bar. "Eliza, go upstairs." "No." "Please." She hesitated, then slowly backed away, but she didn't leave. She stood near the stairs, watching. Garrett turned his attention back to Rowan. "You ready to do this?" "Outside," Rowan said. "Not in here." "Why? Afraid of making a mess?" "Afraid of getting innocent people killed." Garrett considered that, then nodded. "Fine. Outside. They walked out into the street and the whole town seemed to hold its breath. People appeared in doorways, windows, watching but not interfering. Samuel was there, standing near the general store, his face grim. Rowan and the three men spread out, forming a rough line. The distance between them was maybe 15 feet. Close enough to talk. Close enough to die. "Last chance," Rowan said. "Walk away." "No chance," Garrett said. "Draw." Rowan's hand moved to his gun, but he didn't draw. Not yet. He was calculating 3 men, 3 guns, 3 angles of fire. He could maybe take 2 before the third got him. Maybe. Unless he was faster, he'd have to be faster. Garrett went for his gun first. Rowan's hand blurred, and his shot caught Garrett in the chest before the man's weapon even cleared leather. The second man got his gun up, fired wild. Rowan's second shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. The third man, the cocky young one, hesitated. Just for a second, just long enough. Rowan's third shot took him in the leg. He went down screaming. Garrett was on the ground, gasping, blood spreading across his shirt. Rowan walked over and kicked his gun away. "You're done," Garrett coughed, red bubbling from his lips. You're fast. Not fast enough. You're still dying. Was it worth it? Rowan didn't answer. He turned to the second man, the one he'd shot in the shoulder. "Can you ride?" The man nodded, clutching his wound. "Then get your friend and get out of here. And tell everyone you meet what happened. Tell them Rowan Hale doesn't want to kill anyone else. Tell them to stay away." The man scrambled to his feet, helped the younger one up, and they stumbled to their horses. They left Garrett lying in the street, bleeding out, too hurt to move. Samuel came over. "He's not going to make it." "I know." "You want me to get the doctor?" Rowan looked at Garrett. The man was fading fast, his breathing shallow and ragged. "Won't matter. He's got minutes, maybe less." Garrett's eyes found Rowan's. Tell me it meant something. Jessup. Tell me his death wasn't for nothing." Rowan crouched down beside him. "It wasn't. He died because he made a choice, same as you, same as all of us." "That's not much." "It's all we get." Garrett's eyes closed. A few seconds later, he stopped breathing. Rowan stood up, feeling empty. Another body. Another death. Another reminder of who he was and what he did. Eliza was there suddenly, her arms around him, holding tight. "It's okay. You're okay." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are. You're alive. That's what matters." 3 men came here because of me, Eliza. 1's dead, 2 are wounded. How many more before this stops?" "I don't know, but running won't stop it either." "Maybe not, but at least you'd be safe." She pulled back, looking at him with fierce eyes. "I don't want safe if it means losing you. I want you, here, with me, fighting, surviving, living." Samuel cleared his throat. "We should talk, Rowan. All of us. The town council." "You have a town council now?" "As of 2 weeks ago. Come on." They gathered in the church. Samuel, Rowan, Eliza, and 5 other townspeople who'd been elected to the council. Mary, the woman who'd wanted to surrender back when Dutch was alive. A farmer named Tom. The school teacher, a quiet woman named Catherine. A shopkeeper. And the new saloon owner. Samuel stood at the front. "We all saw what happened today. 3 men came looking for Rowan. 1's dead, 2 ran. And this isn't going to be the last time." "So what do we do?" Mary asked. "Ask him to leave?" "I'm right here," Rowan said. "You can ask me directly." Mary looked at him. "Fine. Should you leave?" "Probably. But you're not going to." "Not unless you want me to." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I wanted to give you to Dutch's men, back then. I thought it would save us." "I remember. I was wrong. Giving you up wouldn't have saved anyone. Dutch's crew would have killed us anyway." She paused. "And now you're here and people are still coming to kill you, but the difference is you're trying to protect us. You're not running. You're not hiding. You're standing with us." "That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it honest." Mary looked around the room. "I say he stays, and if more men come, we deal with them, together." Tom, the farmer, spoke up. "I agree. Rowan's earned his place here. He's worked alongside us, helped build this town back up. 1 gunfight doesn't change that." Catherine, the schoolteacher, nodded. My students ask about him. They want to know if he's a hero. I tell them he's a man who made hard choices. That's more valuable than any fairy tale. One by one, the council members spoke. All of them said the same thing. Rowan should stay. Samuel looked at him. There's your answer. This town wants you here. The question is, can you live with that? Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'll try. That's all we're asking. The meeting ended and people filed out. Eliza stayed behind with Rowan. You okay? She asked. I don't know. Part of me feels relieved, like I finally belong somewhere. But another part is terrified that I'm going to get people killed. You might. That's the truth. But you might also save lives. You might make this town safer just by being here. She took his hand. Life doesn't come with guarantees, Rowan. All we can do is choose what we're willing to fight for. And you're willing to fight for this? For me? Every day. He pulled her close and held her, and for the first time since Garrett had walked into the saloon, he felt like maybe he could do this. Maybe he could stay. Maybe he could build a life, even if it meant fighting for it. Winter came early that year. The snow started in November and didn't stop. By December, Coldwater was buried again, cut off from the world just like it had been the year before. But this time, it was different. The town was stronger now, more organized. They'd stockpiled food and supplies, set up a rotation for clearing the roads, and built a network of ropes between buildings so people could find their way in blizzards. And Rowan was part of it all. He spent his days working, fixing roofs, chopping firewood, helping families winterize their homes. At night, he'd sit with Eliza by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. They didn't talk about marriage, didn't make grand plans, they just existed together. And that was enough. One evening in mid-January, there was a knock on the saloon door. Rowan answered it and found a man he didn't recognize, middle-aged, well-dressed, wearing a badge. A marshal. Rowan Hale? The man asked. Rowan's hand drifted toward his gun. Who's asking? Marshal William Cross. I'm here about the incident last autumn. 3 men, Garrett and his crew. They drew on me first. I know. I talked to the survivors. They confirmed your story. Cross paused. I'm not here to arrest you, Mr. Hale. I'm here to ask you a question. What question? How many more men do you think will come looking for you? Rowan didn't answer. Cross nodded like that was answer enough. I've been a marshal for 20 years. I've seen men like you before, good at what they do, trying to leave it behind. It never works. The past always catches up. I know. So here's what I'm offering. You work with me. Not as a deputy. I'm not asking you to wear a badge. But as someone who helps when trouble comes. Someone who protects this town legally. Why would I do that? Because it gives you legitimacy. Right now, every gunfight you're in is questionable. Self-defense? Maybe, but questionable. If you're working with the law, that changes. You become part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Rowan thought about it. And if I say no, then nothing changes. You keep living your life, and I keep doing my job. But the next time someone dies in Coldwater, I have to investigate. And that gets messy for everyone. Eliza appeared behind Rowan. What's this about? Cross tipped his hat. Ma'am, just making Mr. Hale an offer. What kind of offer? Rowan explained. Eliza listened, her face thoughtful. What do you think? Rowan asked her. I think it's a way to stop running. A way to make what you do legitimate. It's also a commitment to this town, to this life. And that scares you. Yeah, it does. She smiled. Good. It should. But I think you should do it anyway. Rowan looked at Cross. How would this work? Simple. I send word when I need help. You respond if you can. And if trouble comes to Coldwater, you handle it and I back your play legally. That's it? That's it. Rowan thought about all the men he'd killed, all the towns he'd left behind, all the years he'd spent running, and then he thought about Eliza, about Samuel, about the school they'd built and the well they'd dug and the community they were creating. All right, he said. I'll do it. Cross smiled and held out his hand. Welcome aboard. They shook, and just like that, Rowan's life changed again. The months passed. Spring came, melting the snow and opening the roads. Rowan worked with Cross on a few cases. Nothing major, just tracking down thieves and settling disputes. It was strange being on the side of the law after so many years operating outside it, but it felt right. People in Coldwater started to see him differently, not as the killer who'd saved them from Dutch, but as someone who belonged, someone they could count on. One afternoon in April, Rowan was working on a fence when Samuel found him. "Got a minute?" Samuel asked. "Sure." They walked to the edge of town, looking out over the valley. Spring flowers were blooming and the air smelled clean and new. "I wanted to thank you," Samuel said. "For what?" "For staying. For choosing us." Rowan shook his head. "You don't need to thank me." "Yeah, I do. You could have left a dozen times. Should have, probably. But you didn't. You stayed and fought for this place. And that matters." "I'm not a hero, Samuel." "I know. You're just a man doing his best. That's better than a hero. Heroes don't exist. But men who keep showing up, who keep trying, those are real. And we need more of them." They stood in silence for a while, watching the valley. Finally, Samuel said, "You ever think about what comes next?" "What do you mean?" "After all this? After the fighting stops, after things settle down. What do you want your life to look like?" Rowan thought about it. "I don't know. Quiet, maybe? Simple?" "You want kids?" The question caught him off guard. I don't know. Never thought about it." "You should. Eliza would make a good mother." "We haven't talked about that." "Maybe you should." Rowan didn't respond, but the idea stuck with him. That night, he brought it up with Eliza. They were sitting on the porch of the saloon, watching the stars come out. "You ever think about the future?" he asked. "All the time." "What do you see?" She was quiet for a moment. "I see us. Here. Building something that lasts. Maybe a family. Maybe just us. I don't know. But I see you in it. That's what matters." "You want kids?" She looked at him, surprised. "Where's this coming from?" "Samuel asked me. Got me thinking." "And what do you think?" "I think..." He paused. "I think I'd be terrified. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know if I'd be any good at it. Nobody knows how to be a parent until they are one. But what if I mess it up? What if I bring danger into their life? What if..." Eliza put her hand over his mouth. "Stop. You're spiraling." He nodded, and she lowered her hand. "Rowan, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to try. That's all any of us can do." She paused. "And for what it's worth, I think you'd be a good father. You're patient. You're strong. You care about people even when you pretend you don't. You really believe that?" "Yes." He kissed her then, soft and slow. When they pulled apart, he said, "If we do this, if we really build a life here, I want to do it right. I want to..." He hesitated. "I want to marry you." Eliza's eyes widened. Are you asking?" "Yeah, I am, if you'll have me." She laughed, and it was bright and real and full of joy. "Yes, of course, yes." He kissed her again, and this time it felt different. Not like an ending, but like a beginning. They were married in May, in the church where the town had gathered to decide whether to fight or surrender all those months ago. It was a small ceremony, just the people of Coldwater, no grand speeches or elaborate decorations. Samuel officiated, and Eliza wore a simple dress she'd borrowed from Catherine, but it was perfect. Rowan stood at the front, watching Eliza walk toward him, and felt something he'd never felt before. Certainty. Not that everything would be okay or that the future would be easy, but certainty that this was where he belonged. When they exchanged vows, his hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "I promise to stay, to fight for this, for you, for us, as long as I'm able." Eliza smiled through tears. "I promise to stand with you, through whatever comes, because you're worth it." They kissed, and the whole church erupted in applause. Afterward, there was a celebration in the street. Food, music, dancing. Rowan didn't dance, but Eliza made him anyway, and they stumbled through it together, laughing. At one point, Marshal Cross pulled Rowan aside. "Congratulations." "Thanks. You did good, Hale, really good." "We'll see." "No, you did. You made a choice and you stuck with it. That takes guts." Rowan looked at him. "You think it'll last?" This peace? Probably not forever, but long enough to matter. Cross smiled. That's all any of us get. Moments. Make them count. He walked away, leaving Rowan alone with his thoughts. The celebration went late into the night. When it finally ended, Rowan and Eliza went back to the saloon, their home now, officially, and collapsed into bed, exhausted and happy. "We did it," Eliza said. "Yeah, we did." "You scared?" "Terrified," she laughed. "Me too." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in his life, Rowan didn't dream about violence. He dreamed about fields and children and a future that stretched out ahead of him, uncertain but full of possibility. Summer came, and with it, work. Rowan helped finish the well, then started on a new project, expanding the school again. More families were moving to Coldwater now, drawn by its reputation as a safe place to build a life. It was ironic in a way. The town that had been terrorized by Dutch Malone was now known for its peace and stability, and Rowan was part of that. He still got challenges. Men still came looking for him, drawn by his reputation, but most of them left when they saw what he'd built: a life, a family, a community. They saw that fighting him meant fighting all of Coldwater, and that wasn't worth it. A few didn't get the message. Rowan dealt with them quickly and efficiently, always giving them a chance to walk away first. Most took it. The ones who didn't, well, they made their choice. In August, Eliza told him she was pregnant. He'd known it was coming. They'd talked about starting a family, but hearing the word still hit him like a punch to the chest. "You okay?" she asked, watching his face. Yeah, I'm just..." He couldn't find the words. She smiled. "Scared?" "So scared." "Me too. But we'll figure it out, together." He pulled her close, his hand resting on her stomach. There was nothing to feel yet. It was too early, but the idea of it was overwhelming. A child. His child. "We need to build a house," he said suddenly. "What?" "A house. We can't raise a kid in the saloon. We need a real house. With rooms and a yard and..." Eliza laughed. "Okay, we'll build a house." They did. Over the next few months, with help from Samuel and the rest of the town, they built a small house on the edge of Coldwater. It wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room, but it was theirs. Rowan worked on it every day, sawing and hammering and painting until his hands were raw. He'd never built anything before, only destroyed things. And there was something deeply satisfying about watching the house take shape. By October, it was finished. They moved in on a crisp autumn day, carrying their belongings from the saloon to the new house. It felt strange, surreal, like he was living someone else's life. But it was his life now. The baby came in March, during a late-season snowstorm. Rowan paced outside the bedroom while the midwife worked, his nerves frayed, his mind racing through every possible thing that could go wrong. When he finally heard the baby cry, he nearly collapsed from relief. The midwife opened the door. "You can come in now." He stepped inside and saw Eliza holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked exhausted and radiant, and more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. "It's a girl," she said softly. Rowan walked over, his legs unsteady. He looked down at the baby, red-faced, squirming, impossibly small, and felt something crack open inside him. "You want to hold her?" Eliza asked. I don't know how." "Just support her head. You'll be fine." She handed the baby over, and Rowan took her carefully, like she might break. The baby opened her eyes, dark, unfocused, and looked up at him. And in that moment, Rowan Hale, who had killed more men than he could count, who had spent his life running from himself, felt something he never thought he'd feel. Peace. "What should we name her?" Eliza asked. Rowan thought about it, about the town that had taken him in, about the life they'd built, about the future stretching out ahead of them. "Hope," he said quietly. "Let's call her Hope." Eliza smiled. "I like that." They sat together, the 3 of them, while the storm raged outside. Inside, it was warm and quiet and safe. And for the first time in his life, Rowan Hale was home. The years passed. Hope grew into a bright, curious child who loved to explore and ask questions. Rowan taught her to ride, to fish, to see the world with open eyes. Eliza taught her to read, to be kind, to stand up for herself. They had another child 2 years later, a boy they named Samuel, after the man who'd helped build Coldwater into something worth protecting. Rowan's reputation faded over time. New stories replaced the old ones. The man who killed Dutch Malone became the man who built houses, who raised children, who worked alongside his neighbors. He still carried a gun, still knew how to use it, but he rarely needed to. Marshall Cross visited occasionally, checking in, sharing news from the outside world, but mostly Coldwater was left alone. The violence that had once defined it was a memory now, something people told their children about to remind them how far they'd come. On a warm evening in late summer, when Hope was 7 and Samuel was 5, Rowan sat on the porch of their house watching the sunset. Eliza came out and sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You ever miss it?" she asked. "The old life?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "When things get too quiet, part of me gets restless. Old habits." "But you don't leave." "No, I don't leave." "Why not?" He looked at her, then at the house where their children were playing inside. "Because this is better. Harder, sometimes. Scarier, but better." "No regrets? About staying?" "No." He paused. "About the things I did before? That's complicated. I can't undo any of it. Can't bring back the people I killed. All I can do is try to be better. Try to build something that matters." "You have," Eliza said. "You've built a family, a life. That matters more than you know." They sat in silence, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to black. Stars appeared one by one until the whole sky was filled with them. Rowan thought about the road that had brought him here, the violence, the running, the moment he'd walked into a saloon in a frozen town and pulled a trigger that changed everything. He thought about Dutch Malone bleeding out on the floor, about Harker and his men, about all the bodies he'd left behind, and he thought about the choice he'd made, to stay, to fight, to build instead of destroy. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been clean, but it had been worth it. "Rowan," Eliza said quietly. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing us. For choosing this." He took her hand and held it tight. "Best decision I ever made." They sat together until the children called them inside, and then they went, leaving the porch empty and the stars shining down on Coldwater, a town that had survived the worst and built something better from the ashes. Years later, when Rowan was old and gray, sitting in that same spot on the porch, he would think back to that moment, to the choice he'd made in the dead of winter all those years ago. He would think about the lives he'd taken and the lives he'd saved, about the balance between the two and whether it was enough. And he would decide finally that it was. Not because he'd been perfect, not because he'd erased his past, but because he'd tried. He'd chosen something better and fought for it, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. And in the end, maybe that was all anyone could do. Choose, fight, hope. The rest was just living. Rowan Hale had spent most of his life believing he was cursed, that violence followed him like a shadow and would never let him go. And maybe that was true. Maybe the shadow was still there, lurking at the edges. But in Coldwater, surrounded by family and friends and the life he'd built, the shadow didn't seem so dark anymore. It was just part of him, part of his story. And his story, against all odds, had a happy ending. Not perfect, not without scars, but happy. And that was enough.